Hi guys, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy. This time I'm reviewing City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. It is the second book in the Mortal Instrument series, and because this is a sequel, it will contain spoilers for the first book, City of Bones. So if you haven't read that one first, check it out. And I will post over here. I will post the link to my review for City of Bones in the description below if you want to check that out. But this will definitely spoil the first book. If you haven't read that yet, sayonara. City of Ashes picks up almost immediately after City of Bones ends. It's officially a week later, but we get a flashback to what happened right at the end. So in this book, we have a series of downworlder murders happening, particularly of children. So the downworlders are werewolves, vampires, warlocks, and fairies. And they have children going missing and getting murdered, which is kind of the main what's going on bit of this book. And also Valentine is on the loose. He escaped with the Mortal Cup at the end of the first book. So there's this huge thing going on with trying to capture Valentine and figure out Valentine's plans, especially since he's not really present at the beginning of the book. So he's definitely off plotting. The book starts off with the Lightwoods returning. So Alec and Isabel's parents return with the youngest Lightwood child, Max. And right off the bat, we get to meet Maris, who is their mother, and she has to have a very stern talk with Jace where she kicks him out of the Institute because of what happened and his connection to Valentine. And which is not a great first impression. And we can tell that she really cares about her children, but whether or not she considers Jace to be one of her children is kind of up in the air, and she's definitely feeling betrayed. So yeah. Jocelyn and Clary's mother in this book is completely out. She is in a coma, and they are waiting for her to awake when this book starts off. But Luke is taking care of Clary and is this great father figure, and he kind of becomes a father figure to other characters in this book, including Maya, who we get introduced to, who is a werewolf cub. She's about Clary's age. So we meet Maya and get to learn more about the werewolves. Luke's the head of the werewolf pack, so like getting to see his instincts as a leader and a father is really cool. And him also taking in kind of Jace and Simon a bit too. And then we get to see this really awkward thing that's happening with Jace and Clary's relationship now that they know they're brother and sister, but they both really like each other still, so it just is kind of, it's awkward and they're avoiding each other. So that's just great part of this book. I really ship the two of them together, even though they're siblings. I don't know. I'm not convinced that they are technically siblings. I think Valentine's lying, but at the very least, they are like adopted or step siblings, because Valentine definitely seems to have raised Jace. And nobody is disputing that Valentine is Clary's father. And then also happening in this book, we have the Soul Sword going missing, and then this character from the Clave appears, the Inquisitor, to find out what happened with Valentine in the last book and with Hodge, and now that the Soul Sword's missing, and she immediately starts in on Jace and trying to figure out what Jace knows, and she's really awful, and I hate her as a character. She reminds me way too much of Umbridge, and I may have been projecting my Umbridge hatred onto her because they're so similar. But yeah, did not like her, and therefore I'm not really liking the Clave's interference in what's going on. On the whole, I really love this book. It is amazing. I really love these characters. I love Jace and Clary and Isabel and Alec and Simon, and really any situation you put them in, I would care about and love it amazingly. Gave it 5 stars, same as City of Bones. It is definitely a worthy sequel, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future going on, like what happens in the rest of the series. I really care about these characters, and it was really cool to get to know them better. Especially we get to know Alec a lot more in this book. So the whole world gets fleshed out more, and all the characters get more background and more depth, which is what a sequel should do. So perfectly done on that part. and there is like so many twists and turns, but you can follow them. Same as the first book. I really love this. Yes, I love this whole Shadowhunter world. So that concludes my spoiler-free. This concludes my spoiler-free review of City of Ashes. If you haven't read it yet, go check it out, and then you can come back and let me know what you thought of it. Yeah, because I really, really need to talk about spoil stuff. Really need to spoil this book for you, I guess. So, in this book, first off, Simon and Clary start dating, and it's such an awkward way to have it happen. Simon and Clary are just hanging out, and there's been a lot going on, so there's like this pressure on them, and then Simon just kisses Clary, and she kisses him back, and they awkwardly start dating and kind of making out without ever actually saying they're dating, until Simon's just like, hey, Clary's my girlfriend, and Clary's like, what? Huh? And it's so awkward because we know Simon is in love with Clary, but Clary isn't really in love with Simon. Like, not the same way. They are not on par. So this relationship is so off balance that it hurts. And I'm like, oh, no. So at the end of the book, when Simon calls it off, that was one huge relief. Like, thank you. Thank goodness. So my earlier remarks in the City of Bones review where I said any way these ships go, not that way, guys. Not that way. Clary and Simon, not so much. And then also with Simon keeps dying in this book. It's like he thinks he's in Doctor Who or something. Like, first he gets killed and becomes a vampire. Then he comes back, which I knew that was going to happen. I totally knew that one. That was a spoiler for me. But, like, I knew he was coming back, but then he almost dies at the end of the book when they're fighting Valentine. And seriously thought he was dead for a second and was like, I thought Simon stuck around, but apparently not. And then he comes back from that, and only to almost die again by sunlight. Freaking Simon, stop giving me heart attacks, okay? I love you. Please do not die the big death. I beg of you. Being a vampire is enough. You don't actually need to die. So we also have this shift in Simon and Jace's relationship in this book. And we see this with particularly Jace standing up for Simon and kind of being like, he's not, something Valentine says where he's talking about like mundanes. And Jace is like, no, his name is Simon. He's not a mundane. And it's like, yes. And we see how much Jace cares about Clary and Clary cares about Simon. So Jace is trying really hard to be nice and get along with Simon. And Simon's kind of doing the same thing. And I love it. And this gets kind of the epitome of this as at the end scene where Simon has been drained of blood and is about to die. And Jace is just like, so I have blood. And Simon drinks Jace's blood and it's just like, oh my goodness. And that was so perfect and so awesome. And I loved that scene. Like, yay. So much. So excited to see that. But it also is kind of the shift in their relationship in this book that they are trying to get along for Clary's sake. In City of Bones, we don't get to see a whole lot of Alec, and what we do get to see is him being really, really nasty to Clary because they both like Jace, and Alec gets really jealous. So in this book, we get to see a lot more of Alec with just Isabel or with just Jace and not with Clary, and so he's a lot... We get to see a whole other side of him. We get to see him being brotherly and actually caring about his siblings. And it's really awesome. I liked being able to see this other side of Alec and becomes way more relatable and likable. We also get to see him dating Magnus. Like, we don't really see them dating, I guess, but like their relationship and how they are growing on each other. And I love it so much. So I'm totally shipping Alex and Magnus. They're so perfect for each other. We don't see much of Isabel in this book, which is kind of a bummer. Like, she's there and she plays a role, but she's not one of the central characters in this book, which makes me kind of sad because I love Isabel. And we get to meet Max, and he's also this kind of background character with her. But I liked getting to see the rest of the Lightwood family. And we definitely get to meet Maris in this book. She's running the Institute. She kicks Jace out, so the first impression is not great. But then we get to find out how much she really does care for Jace. Like, this is her son just as much as the others. And also, she has this really complicated past with Valentine. She was part of the circle, but she turned her back on them, and everybody still connects the two of them, but she definitely doesn't trust Valentine. She isn't rooting for Valentine. She's definitely fighting against him. And so Maris was a nice character to kind of see shift. So she started off not so much liking her. At the end of the book, I'm like, all right, sweet. It's cool to see Jace have like this positive parental figure and to have a mother who really does care about him. And the whole thing with the Inquisitor. I hated her so much in the book, and I hated her a little bit less at the end when Luke tells us about the backstory of her son and what her son and Valentine were doing in the circle, and then her son dies and how that affects her. But she is just so blinded by her hatred of Valentine and the fact that she thinks Valentine is going to have the same reaction she would have. That and her whole trying to trade Jace for the mortal instruments. When everybody tells her that is not freaking going to work, she doesn't believe them. She doesn't get that Valentine is insane and does not think like everybody else, and that not everybody has the same bond with their children she does. And then she just won't listen to Jace when he tells her Valentine's plans and how to defeat him, or like she needs to go get backup. Like, she just wasted time. Like, she could have called the rest of the Claven. They could have been there a lot sooner. They could have had backup. They could have just gone and stopped Valentine way sooner, and things wouldn't have gotten as bad, but she's just completely blinded, and it's just awful. And then at the end, she has this like secret she's going to tell Jace, but we don't get to hear it, and it's just like so useless as a character. Really useless. So yeah, I didn't like her. She got slightly more tolerable right before she died, but I seriously was not sad to see her dead. Only thing I wish is that we heard the rest of her secret. And then freaking Valentine in this book. I hate Valentine. I think he's a good strong villain, but a really easy one to hate. He's just incredibly awful. So in this book, he steals the soul sword, which is the second of the mortal instruments. In the process, slaughters all the Silent Brothers, and then Jace is captured in the Silent City and being held, and Valentine leaves him. Like, seriously? You're not gonna free your son? Like, he just leaves Jace, so everybody thinks Jace had something to do with this, and he's like, excuse you, no, I was not helping my crazy, insane dad. Thanks. And then later, Valentine is trying to convince Jace to help him, and I'm just like, are you crazy? You left your son to rot in jail instead of breaking him out, and you want him to help you now? And he offers to protect the people Jace cares about, which I am not buying. Like, I wouldn't trust Valentine, first of all, anything he says. Second of all, his idea of protecting you was leaving you in jail to take the fall for the stuff that he did, and you think he's going to protect Clary and the rest of your friends and family. Yeah, right. No wonder. Jace is like, no, I think I will not help you. And then everybody else is completely not surprised by this. Like, Jace keeps telling him about how Valentine tried to, like, turn him, and they're all like, but you said no. It's like, why does everybody just assume that? Because A, Valentine's crazy, and B, Jace, yeah, you are kind of predictable. But adorable. And then we have Valentine controlling demons in this book. In the last book, he had Forsakens, which are like humans that are now damned, but like he's actually controlling demons, particularly the greater demon Agamon, who is like the demon of fear. And seriously, Valentine, I see this being the thing that comes back to bite him in the ass so hard. I really hope the fact that he is trying to control demons is what takes him down. Because no way that is going to turn out well for him. Demons, from what I can tell from these series, do not like to be controlled by humans or Shadowhunters. And so I feel like hopefully this will be what finally brings Valentine down, because this is just complete and utter hubris here, you freaking asshole. So, yeah. Kind of flabbergasted that Valentine thinks this is a good idea. Also, the whole trying to shift the alignment of the mortal instruments, particularly the sword, seems like a really bad idea if you really are trying to defeat all the demons and aren't just on some personal crusade against the clave. So I'm a little confused about what Valentine thinks he's doing. I know he spells it out and everything for Jace, but it's gotta be more than that. Otherwise, why are you going about it this way? Like, I'm not buying the whole you think the clave is corrupt and needs to be taken down thing. Like, there's gotta be more to it. Otherwise, why are you turning your back on the very things that being a Shadowhunter is about, which is fighting demons? Just, okay. Valentine's crazy. Also, in my gripes against Valentine and why he's an awful villain, he has to take downworlder blood, and he particularly goes after Maya and Simon, who he knows means something to Luke and Clary and the other Shadowhunters. So this is personal, and I feel like this is a really asshole move of him in his attempts to manipulate everybody, but also B, really kind of fucked him over. Because if he had gone off and taken some other downworlders that nobody would have missed, they wouldn't have come after Simon and Maya. Like, he might have actually gotten to turn the sword's alignment, because they wouldn't have gone after him with that much vengeance and that much immediacy to it. Like, they would have stopped and thought things through. Instead, he fucked himself over majorly with that. So that was just not well thought out. So I'm starting to see flaws in Valentine's plans, and hopefully this will ultimately lead to his downfall, because he's pretty freaking awful. And so the end of this book, he has momentarily been stopped, but he still escapes with the mortal cup and the mortal sword. He has two of the mortal instruments still. So this is not boding well for the Shadowhunters at all. Nope. Okay. Gripe about Valentine done. Next we have Luke and his confession of love for Jocelyn, which I was just like, yeah, totally got that from the first book, but I still liked hearing it. Thank you, Luke. And totally shipping them, even though we don't really see them together much. Totally want Luke and Jocelyn to be together. So, the other part of this Jocelyn and Luke thing is that Jocelyn is still in her coma, and then her friend shows up and is like, I know how to wake Jocelyn up. And that's how the book ends. So I am totally like, I need to read the next book now, which is why this review is so rushed, because I am like, must film before I mix up what happens in which book. But I am super excited to start reading City of Glass and find out what happens next. Oh my goodness. One other thing that happened in this book that I kind of skipped over was the whole going to the Sealy court and meeting the fairies and the Fairy Queen, which kind of felt deja vu-like to me. I don't know if it's just because I read enough fantasy books that going to the fairy court almost seems inevitable, and that they almost all sort of seem the same, like the fairies are the tricksters. I don't know, that was major deja vu. But the fairies are not great, not nice, and they're supposed to be the offspring of demons and angels, and I'm definitely seeing the demon blood in them. Totally see that. I'm not seeing angel blood in them, though. So I hope they surprise me later in turn. Like, I know they come help them in the big battle at the end, but I'm not really seeing them being aligned towards the angels the same way the Shadowhunters are, so is demon blood just stronger than angel blood? I don't know. And then they have this really perverted thing where they're like, to escape, you must do the thing your heart desires most, which apparently is Clary kissing Jace. And making them do it, even though Clary and Jace are siblings. And then it's really awkward because Isabel and Simon and Alec are all watching. And Clary and Jace probably enjoyed that more than they should have, and that was more an involved kiss than needed to be. So that was kind of awkward. Yeah, which leads us to Clary and Jace's relationship throughout this whole book, which is just kind of, there's a scene where Jace and Clary are like back at the institute, and Jace is just in a towel, so totally appropriate. And he decides to kiss Clary, and then she's like, this is kind of gross. And he's completely offended by it. She's your sister. That is kind of what everybody's gonna think, Jace. You didn't see that argument coming? Really? Really completely off guard. And then it's awkward together, like every time they talk. It's kind of this thing in between them. It's such a big part of their interactions between the two of them is this thing where they really like each other, but they can't be together. And then the end of the book, Clary's like, you know what? I love Jace. We're just going to go with it. I'm going to tell him. And then Jace is like, you know what? You were right. We are siblings. We need to back off, and I will never bring this up again. And Clary's like, but wait, I can't. Oh. So another huge cliffhanger at the end of this book. So yes, I am totally need to finish this so I can read City of Glass. Yeah. So there you guys go. There is my review of City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. Let me know in the comments below if you've read this book and what you thought of it, or if you haven't read it. I don't know why you got to the end of this video when I told you spoilers, but thanks for watching my whole video. Whatever. Tell me what you guys think of this book or the Mortal Instruments series. Please don't spoil the other books for me, and we'll try not to do the same to you guys. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye.